After Bridget and Sandra terminated their pregnancies because they weren't the same sex, I decided I had reached my limit. No amount of financial burden was too much for them to receive some form of retribution. In the days that followed, I did confront them about this, and they stuck to the idea that it wasn't a big deal, and that we could all just try again next month. I secretly scheduled a vasectomy consultation for the following week. My appointment was 9 days later. I hired an Uber driver to bring me home. When the twins asked me what was wrong, I told them I pulled something working out. That was step 1, now they couldn't hurt me again. Step 2 was to turn on super dad mode. Bridget and Sandra both got raises when they became managers. These were pretty good size raises, which mostly went towards the new rental. This whole time I had been working Tuesday to Saturday nights at my uncle's bar. They always complained that they didn't get to go out anymore. Which wasn't true, they did, just not together as much, or hardly ever really. One would stay home with the kids while the other went out. I proposed that I switch to part-time. Only working Friday and Saturday nights. Then I could stay at home with the kids more and they could go out together some. Thursdays are ladies' nights at a lot of local places. They liked the sound of it, and when I showed them we could afford it, especially since I was keeping the 2 nights that brought in 75% of my income, they agreed. Now I was really the primary caregiver to both kids. Spending every day and 5 nights a week directly raising Trevor and Terrence. The twins took the newfound freedom and ran with it. I kept a log of all their nights out, including receipts and bank statements. I let this roll for a whole year. About 6 months into this, they decided it was time to try and get pregnant. Obviously it never worked. They didn't know I was shooting blanks now. I knew eventually they would grow frustrated. It took 6 months for them to just really snap at me. I knew it was time. My last act of vengeance was to drive them apart. While Sandra was allowed to use me for sex, we never had an affectionate relationship. Bridget did still make some effort at actual intimacy. It was one-sided, but she did like to be cuddled and still talk to me about her life. I knew if that dynamic changed she would come unglued. I began to ignore Bridget, while simultaneously focusing my attention on Sandra. Sandra was definitely not receptive initially, but I persisted. No matter what she did, I made a big deal out of it. If she brought dinner home, I made it seem like it was exactly what I needed, and she was the most generous of women. If Bridget did the same thing, I didn't praise anything, and usually made up at least one complaint. I absolutely refused to tend to any of Bridget's needs. No more cuddling, no more listening to her talk. If Sandra needed something, no matter how frivolous, I jumped to it. Over the months I could see it all taking a toll on Bridget. At the same time, with all the undivided attention, Sandra began to soften to me. Bridget took notice and I began to see the tension between them grow. That led to maybe the most fucked up thing I pulled. I got a Viagra prescription. It wasn't hard, I just lied to my doctor about having trouble. I had lost all feelings for Bridget, and she really kind of disgusted me. They both did, but the plan was more important than my tastes. It wasn't difficult to start having trouble in the sex department with Bridget. No matter what she tried to get me going, I would just think about all the pain she had caused. From her perspective, she just couldn't get me aroused anymore. To pour salt into the wounds, whenever Sandra needed that itch scratched, I would pop a Viagra and be absolutely maxed out since I didn't actually need it. Their relationship strained more and more as I played favorites with Sandra. I began to see them argue, which never happened before. When Bridget changed her hair color to not match Sandra's, I knew I had one. With all the praise Sandra was getting at home, she was staying in more often. Bridget meanwhile was going out more often. I figured it was only a matter of time before she began to cheat. I tried to keep a close eye on how she was acting, looking for all the cliché signs. Eventually she started working late, and spending huge amounts of time on her phone, which she hid otherwise. Then I dropped the bomb on her. I asked for divorce, but that we keep our current situation. I said, I think it best if we divorce. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I'd think it best if we kept everything the same, but I was married to Sandra instead. She lost her fucking mind. She was screaming and yelling at me non-stop. Eventually Sandra came in to see what was going on. Bridget turned her attention towards her sister immediately. I had never seen either of them like this. Sandra looked completely bewildered, because while she enjoyed my attention, it was largely on a subconscious level. I played it up, stating I only loved Sandra. Sandra looked at me like, WTF. Before she could say anything though, Bridget clocked her right in the mouth, knocked out a tooth, and sent blood spatter flying across the room. Sandra, enraged, lunged back at her. It was a full-on fight. I called the police at that point. They ended up taking them both to the ER, then arresting them. Bridget's nose was broken, both had bruises and cuts. It was crazy. With her phone left behind, I collected any evidence of infidelity on Bridget's phone, and any evidence of our pseudo-throuple. I didn't want Bridget coming back saying I was a cheater too. They were both bailed out by their parents the following morning. I found it hilarious that they had to stay the night in jail. That same week I filed for divorce from Bridget. We went all in on the demands. I asked for spousal support and full custody of Trevor. At the same time we filed for full custody and child support of Terrence as well. The months since have been hard, mostly just dealings with legal stuff. I did find my own place pretty quick, and landed a decent daytime job at a lumber company. Both of them fought me pretty hard, but not being a united front hurt Bridget and Sandra. In the end I was awarded primary custody and child support from both of them. I did not get spousal support from Bridget, but that's no big loss. I'm really excited for what the future holds. Still embarrassed about my past, but I have come away with a newfound sense of self. Sky's the limit from here.